Welcome back. We have with us Mrs. Ifeanyiwa Omesieta. She is a certified nutritionist with a BSc in Nutritional Sciences from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities in the US. Now, she consults at various hospitals for children of all ages, where she treats medical and dietary ailments. Through her social media platform, she educates and shares her personal experiences on how to live in a modern world, raising healthy and well-nourished children. Today, we're going to be talking about picky eaters. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for finding out time from your busy schedule to be here. Now, this issue of picky eaters, well, first of all, let's tell people what picky eaters actually are.
Okay, so a picky eater is someone who is technically selective about the choices that they make when it comes to food.
Okay.
So be it taste, texture, color, smell.
Okay.
Sometimes even just the approach in which the meal is being offered or served.
Okay.
That's usually where you have the person thinking, I like this, I don't like that, I like some of this, I like that. So,
when a child is a picky eater, you know, obviously it has a lot to do with the environment or who is the one, who the person doing the feeding is.
Right.
I've worked with older women, you know, my mom especially, who just thinks, you know what, this one is just stubborn. You know, that stubborn thing keeps coming up. Don't worry, when they're hungry, they will eat. So what do you tell parents who have picky eaters?
So the first thing is understand who the child is. So we always think that a child must always be coerced or a child must always be forced to do something, when truly that person is an individual that's unique in their own way. So they have specific ways of being able to eat.
Okay.
Sometimes how you're able to even understand a picky eater is they like textures. So they don't want it always smooth, but because you're afraid of choking or you're afraid of messes, you're always making everything very smooth, and that child is rejecting it. The moment you switch, they're more open to the meal. Some people don't like the way things look. For example, I eat with my eyes. If it doesn't look appealing, I'm not going to eat it. There are children who are like that. Then there's also the aspect of, the psychology of food. Some children are just afraid, either the way it's presented, either the way they've watched the people around them eat food, the way that they're always forced to eat the food. So the psychology sometimes messes with them, and their approach to it is, I'm afraid, I'm not interested, I don't want to try. And then there's also the aspect of, I just don't like what you're offering. Figure this out. It doesn't taste right. It doesn't feel right in my mouth. You know, so sometimes you have to work a little harder. That's why I always tell parents, lower your expectations. Your expectations are too high. That child just maybe wants 2 or 3 spoons every 3 hours. Get with the program.
So are you trying to say that this child is saying, Mommy, you can't cook?
Some children would actually tell you,
Mommy, your food does not taste good.
It doesn't taste nice. There's not enough carrots, there's not enough veggies, it's too white, you think I want to eat things bland. And you know, they send that message multiple times.
And nobody's listening.
Exactly. Because maybe they're not, because they can't, you know, maybe if I'm like 6 months, 12 months, I can't really speak. But you need to be listening. My body language is telling you that.
I want to go back to that age thing. You said 3 months, 6 months. 3 months old is telling me that you don't want to eat. Irony, you must eat that food. You must eat that food. Okay, so from my perspective, I had 2 case studies because I have twin girls. So one is more picky than the other with regard to African food. So one will tell you she wants carrots, cucumbers, and fresh vegetables. If I'm eating a salad, she's there. The other one, if she sees anything green, she will fly to Mars if she had her way. But in the end, we have more African food here. I can't always find carrots and cucumbers to satisfy one. This is the situation with many parents. This is what I have. This is the food I can afford. So what do you do in that kind of case?
Get creative. So we have these certain combinations in our minds that are fixed. For example, rice and beans is it. Or if it's not dodo and beans. You know, sometimes it could be apples and beans. Sometimes it could be potatoes with rice. You know, sometimes, even if you don't have carrots, you have vegetables. Sometimes I want to eat my soup alone, or I want you to mix my pap with my soup. You have to remove those combinations that you have in your mind as an adult and get down to the level of the child, because that's, at the end of the day, really what you want is nutrient intake. And not really about how you finish the food or whether the food looked good. You want that child to consume nutrients. So when you begin to approach things from that perspective, anything goes. If you want milk in your beans, I'll do that for you.
Wow, wow. But of course, milk in beans just sound like it'll make a child ill.
It sounds like it, but you'd be shocked at what some children are willing to take.
Okay. So I'm thinking about it now. You talked about different combinations. When should we be worried about a child's eating? So for instance, this child is not consuming more than 2-3 spoons of whatever you put in front of that child.
Yeah.
The child is losing weight. And no matter how much your grandmother says, don't worry, when the child is hungry, they will eat. The child is not eating. When should you get worried as a parent?
So you should be concerned if there's like a drastic loss in weight. Okay. Typically, people always are concerned about either the size or the way their child looks. I always tell people, remove the physical eyes from this approach, because really all the work is being done internally. So what your focus really should be on is, have you lost a significant amount of weight, for example, over 6 months? So let's use an example. There's a 6-month-old who's just getting off breast milk, probably was, really chubby, looked very rounded. And then by the time they turn 9 months, it almost looks as if they thinned out.
Yeah.
They haven't thinned out, they just grew taller.
Okay.
So between the ages...
So they've not lost weight,
exactly,
they're just growing.
They're just growing. Okay. So the energy is being used differently.
Okay.
So when you look at it from that perspective, you're kind of like, oh, okay. But if it is that the child is still growing really lean or really skinny, then the first thing to look at is, what am I giving in terms of nutrients, in terms of quantity-wise? Now, there's a saying that if you don't eat everything in one sitting, you can eat smaller quantities frequently. Okay. So if it means that you have to give that child a meal every 2 to 3 hours and all they're taking is about 5-6 spoons, that's very fine. Okay. The key is nutrient density and not quantity. Okay. The denser the meal is in terms of carbohydrates, in terms of proteins, your fats, because children should have fats and they're healthy ones, in terms of vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, then your child is good to go. But if you miss out any of those at every given opportunity, then that child is not getting all the nutrients they need.
All right, so I'm trying to break this down now. So if, for instance, my child is not a picky eater and the child is eating rice, amala, eba, noodles, spaghetti, right, in a day. Yeah. That child might actually be less healthy than one that eats different nutrients over maybe 10 different meals in a day.
Yeah. So
the child eats a lot, but not enough nutrients.
So that child is not even, might not be healthy, that child is not healthy. All they are consuming is carbohydrates, complex carbs at that. That's when you begin to have issues of constipation, you begin to have drowsiness, you begin to have lethargic children, because all that child is eating is high carbs. There's nothing to balance it off. Even things like thinking you're saying, oh, I'm eating rice, and then later on you give them beans, and then you forget that there needs to be some kind of protein, because against popular belief, beans is more carbohydrates than it is protein. So really, balancing every meal. When we say balanced diet, we're not kidding. We literally mean balancing it every time a child eats, because they're eating for development and not survival.
Development, not survival. So are there, based on the picky eaters now, so we're trying to stay on topic because we're going into other areas now. Based on the picky eaters, what are the disadvantages of ignoring this picky eater and letting the child just eat whatever? Well,
the disadvantage is that it becomes a habit, and we all know habits are hard to break. Another disadvantage is that child thinks that that's the norm, and then leave your home or go into the world and have that kind of expectation, and grow into adults and begin to have more chronic issues and diseases. Because the truth of the matter is, if you don't eat right, if you don't feed right, it affects your psychology, it affects the way that you function in the normal world, affects your sleep, affects your size. It goes so far. And then, what we're seeing today with a lot of adults is a lot of the issues they're having, either with metabolism, either with struggling to sleep, and even adults that have anemia, it's because they didn't deal with those things as children, or no one looked into those things as children. So we start having major chronic diseases.
Okay, so there's a parent watching right now that has a picky eater. I know that if you met this parent, they came to your office, you would have some advice for them. What's the first piece of advice you would give them?
First piece of advice is calm down.
Okay.
Breathe and calm down. You're not the only one. If I get a penny for every time I hear it, I'd be the richest person in the world. Okay. And then the next step is tell me about who your child is and not what you've been feeding. Because from understanding who the child is, sometimes it might even be a traumatic experience.
Wow.
So just tell me who your child is and let's work from there.
I wish we could continue this conversation because it's a really interesting one. We've been talking about picky eaters and would love to know what your thoughts are as well. Use our hashtag WakeUpNigeria on TVC. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
It's been a pleasure.
At The Kid Nutritionist?
Yes, at The Kid Nutritionist.
On Instagram. All right, then we're going to be moving on with the show now. And we have a performer standing by.